This is the Brisbane Lions Fancast with Dom Fay and Michael Whiting.
Yes, welcome to another week of the Fancast. And Mike, finally we've got 4 points to celebrate.
Finally! Something to cheer about, Dom. We've
Yes.
had to plough through the first 5 weeks. It's nice to have a bit of positivity to talk about, isn't it? But geez, they made everyone bite their nails a bit, didn't they? It was a bit of a heart-stopper.
Absolutely. Those shots of Leper in the coach's box after the siren went, I think summed up how every Lions fan in the country was probably feeling at that very moment. It was a tight match, very good first half, I would say. Second half dropped off a little bit, we're a bit more rusty, but really good that we were able to tough it out and get the win in the end.
Yeah, definitely. Just looked like they ran out of legs a little bit, didn't it, late in the match? And the commentators were right in the pressure was incredible in that the defensive setup, and the pressure was great in those first probably 2.5, maybe even 3 quarters. And St Kilda just started to get a bit more run in the fourth quarter and really put the pressure on in a big way in that fourth quarter. But it doesn't matter. We won't look at how it was won in 6 weeks' time. We'll just worry that it was a win. So great to finally... I'm just as happy for Justin Lepich as anyone. I mean, it was great for the kids to get a win as well. They'll have plenty more in the future, but just great for Leper. He'd been dealt such a difficult hand in the first 5 weeks with the draw and the injuries and whatnot. So I was really stoked for him to get on the board as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things to talk about out of the game. Obviously, the great game of James Aish, which we'll touch on a little bit later on, no doubt. Some of the other kids, I thought Nick Robertson was brilliant in the first quarter. He one of the best first quarters for a young player I've seen. Lewis Taylor, very good again. The big standout, though, for many people was Andrew Rains. Big surprise seeing him in an offensive role, and he's got probably a lot more style in his game than many of us thought he did.
Well, he's got pace, which is, I guess, acceleration, which not a lot of Lions players have got at the moment, although those kids you touched on there have definitely got it. Taylor, Robertson, and to a lesser extent, Aish. But Rainsy's got some real dash, hasn't he? And probably we haven't been able to see that side of his game for a few years because he's been a real lockdown tagger. He hasn't chased his own ball too much, although he did get it a bit at stages through those past couple of years. But definitely just his speed and his acceleration I thought was noticeable, and disposal's been questionable for him over the years, but it was pretty good on Friday night, and if he can keep that disposal at a decent level, he's he might have a chance of reinventing himself.
I did mention it earlier, but it was outstanding to see that when the rest of the side did drop off a little bit, James Aish, first-year player, absolutely stood up in the second half to play his best game for the club so far. And I remember you mentioned on the show last week that he was probably the one who hadn't quite had a breakout moment or a breakout game yet. Well, we got it on Friday night, didn't we?
Gee, it was good, wasn't it? What you said there was spot on. Just the fact that he was able to stand up in that second half. It was like when the game was on the line, you had a kid standing up and taking control of it. There was that contested mark on the goal line. He was great in stoppage situations with a number of clearances, tackling in tight quarters, a nice snapped goal in the second quarter. But just when the game was on the line, he really stood up and was one of the sort of more dominant players in the Lions. And it was great to see with such a tight match that a young guy could take it over.
Yeah, I think it will be the first of hopefully quite a few Rising Star nominations for the club this year. Very good to see Aish get to be the first cab off the rank. Other few things to talk about. Now, Michael Close re-signing for 3 years, which is a hefty contract for a player who's only played a few senior games.
Big vote of confidence, I think, too. I had a little raised eyebrow when I saw that, and that's no slight on Michael Close, because I think he's shown enough in his couple of games that there's a little bit of a future there. But I thought, whoa, 3 years, that's a pretty big vote of confidence for him. I think he would have been putting pen to paper as soon as he could when he saw that. But I guess what it shows is that Brisbane's desperate to lock in not only all their kids, but all their tall kids. Mm-hmm. They're hard to come by. So I guess they realise that it's going to take 4 or 5 years to show some signs of improvement. So they've backed him. That'll take him to the end of 5 seasons at the club, and you'd probably know by then whether he's going to make it or not. So they've given Michael Close every chance, but I must admit I did raise my eyebrows a little bit when I saw 3 and not 2 years.
Yeah, I did a little bit too, but I do agree with you that I think with the tall players, they need more time. And what this does is it just removes all pressure, basically, off him for at least 2 seasons. And it means that we're not going to be sitting there in 2016 thinking, well, do we keep him? Do we cut him? Anything like that. Basically, he's got the time now to develop as a key forward should. And I think that's good for both him and the club, because I think we've all seen from him that he has a few very handy attributes for a key forward. And you just never know. I think he's a promising player, and 3 years now to see whether he can make it or not is good for all involved, probably.
It takes it to 5 years, and everyone harps back on Tom Hawkins because he's the greatest example of the modern era, I guess, of a big guy that didn't look like he was going to do too much for his first 4 or 5 years, had potential, but then it was about that 5 or 6 year mark when he came through. So I guess the club wants to give him that long. We saw the club cut Aaron Cornelius at the end of last year. He'd had a similar time frame. Jordan Lyles now at the end of his 6th season in the system, 3rd at the line. So you'd probably know by the end of this year what sort of a future he's going to have. So I guess you're around that 23, 24-year-old, 5 or 6 years in the system when you've got a fair idea whether the player's going to make it, and they're going to give Close every chance to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, probably worth very briefly touching on the latest chapter in the Springfield saga, as reported by Andrew Hamilton.
The Springfield saga.
Yeah, that's
it's a saga.
That's what it's called now, I think. Apparently, that there is the possibility of the Lions down the track playing premiership matches out at Springfield. Now, I think this took some by surprise. Others probably saw it more as a bargaining tool with the Gabba in terms of trying to negotiate a new deal. But I think certainly the timing of it was a bit unexpected, and many people probably had never entertained the idea that we could play premiership matches out there, so they're probably reeling a bit. And I've seen a fair bit of, I don't know if I'd use the word disrupt or anything like that, but there's been some unhappiness about it in social media.
Well, hopefully by the time this goes to air, I'll have a story on the AFL website having an update on that. But I have spoke to Bob Sharpless about that article, and I guess not just about that article, but just the situation in general. And he did say that while there's the potential for premiership matches out there, it was a long, long, long time into the future. And my understanding was that it was more a fact of never wanting to say never. Because
Right.
It's one of those comments where if you say, no, we're never going to play premiership matches out there, if by some chance it happens in 20 or 30 years that you do, or 30 or 40 years, it's one of those quotes that comes back to bite you. But Bob Sharpless said to me that it certainly wouldn't happen in his lifetime, and I don't know how long Bob plans on living for.
Sticking around, yeah.
But it's obviously quite a while into the future. So I think everyone just should hold their horses, and like I said, hopefully there'll be a story on our website by the time this goes to air, which might help clarify things. But
Yeah.
It's definitely something that's going to be ongoing because the Lions have still waiting to get the final bit of that capital that they need to build the admin and training centre out at Springfield. So I guess in the first place, until that comes through, things are going to be left in limbo, and anything beyond that, I think we have to sort of put on hold.
Yeah, definitely. Great to get that cleared up just a little bit. Now, on to the on-field action again. We're coming off a win, and we're up against a Sydney side who have proved for many years now to be, along with Richmond, probably the two sides we've gone worst against. Now, this is a little exciting because Sydney seem a bit
Dom's
right
got
for the
that
picking.
glint.
Yeah.
Dom's got the glint.
Well, they do. I mean, this is a side who coming into the year everyone thought was a top 4 lock, especially adding Buddy Franklin to that side. But they have looked far from amazing in the opening rounds. On the weekend, they got the job done against Melbourne. I wouldn't say anything more than got the job done. Would be how to appraise that performance. We're coming off a win with some confidence. It's at the Gabba. You never know.
Well, you never know. And I, like you, I thought that Sydney were a top 4 lock. I had them at different stages. I had in my head that they'd be playing off in the grand final this year, and they still might, but their form's been scratchy at best in the first 6 weeks. So, I mean, there is a chance Brisbane is coming off a win. I'll be interested to see how the young players react. We know with young teams like Brisbane's, you're going to have ups and downs through the season. So whether that win inspires them and gives them some momentum, or whether they just come off a little bit of a high. I tend to think it'll be the former. I think they'll get a bit of momentum and get a bit of confidence out of it. Sydney is still a tough team, and the chance of having a forward line that includes Tippett, Franklin and Goods is pretty scary, and it throws up a few selection, I guess, headaches or dilemmas for Justin Leppich, which he had last week as well. So I think there's definitely a chance to win. I'll spoil the end of the show now by saying that I won't be tipping the Lions, but I think they've certainly got a chance. It will be difficult though, because despite Sydney's struggles early in the season, they're still a terrific team.
Yeah, it's one thing to match it with Sydney for parts of the match, which I think we are a good chance at doing. It's an entirely different thing to actually get over the line at the end. They seem to be a side that, regardless of form over the past few years, have always found a way, or regularly found a way of still winning, even when they have been in scratchy form. So I think it's going to take our absolute best effort. And as you said, with that forward line, a young player like a Darcy Gardner, if he stays in, which I think he probably will probably have quite a task on Saturday night.
I think you're right, Dom. And just before we move on segments here, it'd be remiss of us not to for me to not touch on Daniel Merritt being used forward. It was a big talking point the past couple of years under Michael Voss's reign, using Daniel Merritt as a stopgap forward. What did you think when you saw that Merritt was going to play forward against St Kilda and then subsequently did?
I didn't mind it, to be honest, because I think we've unearthed, at the moment, more young key position defending performers rather than key position forward performers in the young stocks. So I think that because of that, it makes logical sense to play Justin Clark and to play Darcy Gardner and to have Merritt up forward at the moment where, I mean, suddenly when the ball goes forward, it looks so much more likely for something to happen up there because you've got Brown and Merritt, working in tandem. So I'm actually... In fact, I made the comment, and this is quite a controversial comment, some would say, but I made the comment Friday night watching it that Merritt should play there the rest of his career, which I think he should play out his career in the forward line, which I know sounds a bit of a premature thing to say after 1 week of doing it, but I really think that is probably going to be his best position going forward.
Yeah, well, when I saw the teams come out and learned of the fact that he was going to play forward, I was against it. I was definitely against it. I thought this was a step backwards. But I guess the more I thought about it, I sort of came around to your way of thinking in that basically it's a choice between do we play a young forward or do we play a young defender and we use Merritt in the alternate spot. So I think you're right, the fact that you give Darcy Gardner a game now and you give Justin Clark a game, or if you're playing back, one of those guys misses out and you give Michael Close or you give Jackson Payne or you give John O'Freeman or you give someone of that ilk another game. So I guess it's one or the other and I'm comfortable with either, I guess, in hindsight. Although at the time, I must admit, I thought it was a step back and I sort of cringed a little bit when I saw Merritt pushed forward, but it had success last week. It gave the midfielders another target to kick forward to, and it worked last week. I guess time will be the judge of whether it's a successful ploy over the duration, but it does give a young defender another opportunity. But I think that might be tested this week. We'll see what happens if Franklin, Tippett and Goods all get on a bit of a roll and whether he's swung back. I guess that's a luxury you have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to have someone in the team who can swing back like that. And on to another redhead, Josh Green. He'll be joining us on the Fancast after this.
The best way to keep track of everything Lions is to head to lions.com.au. It's the first place to find the latest Lions news and videos, get the lowdown on upcoming games, results and player stats. There's also great ways to interact with live chats, downloads and Player of the Year voting updates. And with a social media hub, you can connect with all the Lions social media activity. Lions.com.au. Everything Lions, all in one place.
He returned to the side on Friday night with a few great moments up forward. It is Josh Green joining us on the Fancast today. Well, thanks for joining us, Josh.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Now, I just want to know, firstly, how good was it to get a win?
Yeah, it was really good. We went over there really excited about the opportunity to play on Anzac Day and to come over the win was really good, especially for the young boys who hadn't experienced a win with the club yet. So, very excited and looking forward to this week against Sydney.
We've already debated it on the show a little bit, Josh, between ourselves, but just what can a win do for the young guys? Do you think it can give them the confidence to sort of, take another step forward and get a bit of momentum from here?
Yeah, the impact, it was really big for the young fellas and even myself and the younger guys just to sort of understand that, this is what this club's about, is winning games and not just being happy with being competitive. So to go over there and travel and bond and get a win like that, it was a really good feeling after the game. So, yeah, we took a lot out of it and hopefully we can, drive us towards more wins for the rest of the season.
Now, one thing that many people picked up on pretty much from the opening bounce was just how good Brisbane's pressure was compared to St Kilda's. Was there a mindset in particular of go out there and put on a lot of pressure or was there anything different, I suppose, from other weeks that caused that?
No, we sort of kept our approach pretty much the same as last week. We just, as a forward line, we focused more on just applying that pressure for 4 quarters. and as a whole team, just sort of looking after each other, and mostly just having a bit of fun, and stick to our game plan. So there was no real big changes. We just we worked hard together, and I think the big thing was the younger blokes are starting to get a bit more confidence. So no real big changes. We just starting to get used to Lefferts' game plan as well.
Josh, can we just get you to elaborate a bit on those younger guys? Because obviously James Aish got the Rising Star nomination this week. Louis Taylor kicked a couple of goals. Nick Robertson's come in, done really well. Darcy Gardner, Tom Cutler. There's a whole heap of guys. In a lot of cases, not only have they come in, but they've really contributed. Can you tell us a bit about, I guess, your thoughts on what they've been able to do sort of so early in their career?
Yeah, I've just been really impressed by the way they've come in and applied themselves and do what they're told, sort of thing. That's the sort of attitude of the first years, and then also the ability to come in and make an impact at senior level was really good. You can see with James Aish, he's just a really level-headed kid who has got a real good footy brain. Louis Taylor, I just love playing with him. He's a ripper. And also Deers and Cutler and all the young boys. They're just having a go and put themselves out there to improve.
For a few years now, there's been a criticism of the Lions, particularly up forward, that they've looked a bit slow and one-dimensional. But suddenly, with you, Zorko, and also Lewis Taylor going through there, that looks to have completely changed. Do the three of you have a bit of a good dynamic working together and rotating with some in the midfield, some of you up forward? And is it just a working as a really well-oiled machine at the moment?
Yeah, so I just think with footy these days, that's where footy's going. You sort of need to have that smaller, just high-running small forwards. So it's really good with us three. We can sort of have a bit of a break because it's such a high-intensity role for us, and we pride ourselves on putting good pressure on up forward. So, we're starting to get a good relationship, us three, and I've played the Zorks for a couple of years now, but Louis starting to understand how me and the Zork play. So, yeah, that's just... and also with the other forward line, John O'Freeman, Michael Close, just some good young fellas coming through as well, which is positive.
What about your own finishing on Friday night, Green? You missed a couple of left foot snaps there. You'll be putting a bit of extra work into those this week.
Yeah, pretty disappointed about that. But, just got to work on it during the week, which I had today and Thursday. So, yeah, just a bit more composure and kicking through the ball a bit more. But it was good to have a couple of shots, but just need to finish off.
There was a moment in the match early on where Louis Taylor took the advantage, almost ran himself into trouble, but you saved it and kicked it a goal. Did he thank you for that one afterwards?
No, we sort of just looked at each other and, I just said, "What were you doing?" And he's like, "I didn't hear the whistle," so it's all good. He's going really well, Louis, and he's a good fella.
Just before we move on to chatting about Sydney, just one more on St Kilda, Josh. That last quarter, watching from the outside, it was getting quite tense. It looked like you were doing everything you could to lose the match. Did you sort of have a bit of a feeling there at one stage that, oh, geez, here we go again?
It was. Yeah, it would have been a bit frustrating, really frustrating if we lost, because we'd obviously put ourselves in a good position for the game, and obviously if we did let it slip, it would have been hard with the start we've had this year. But as I said, we've got the right game plan, and we just stuck to that. And there was a few good contests from a couple of the tools that sort of straightened us up a bit. And we just I think it was great that we could hold up for that last quarter and come away with the win.
So looking forward to Sydney, they are a side who are in a bit of a form slump this year. Things haven't been going superbly for them. Are they still as formidable an opponent as ever to you guys, or do you see some signs of weakness? I know you're not going to come out and say, yeah, we think they're vulnerable or anything like that, but have you noticed their slight drop-off in form, and does it change at all how you look forward to this weekend?
I think you still got to be very wary of their forward line and their tools. As you can see with Franklin, he's very, very dangerous. Reid, Goods is back now. Tippett. So no, we're under no illusions that they're struggling. We think we're very, wary about their talent, and they're a great side. They've showed that over the last 5-6 years. So we're just going to prepare as normal, and as we said, I've taken a lot of confidence out of last week. So all we can do is put our best foot forward this week in front of our home crowd, and just keep playing exciting football for our fans, and hopefully we can get our season back on track by beating the Swans.
They've always been known as a really contested team there, Josh, but you've obviously touched on their forward line and how dangerous and exciting, if you're a Sydney fan, they could be. What do you have to do to beat them this weekend?
Yeah, touching back on their forward line, you just got to obviously try and nullify their tall forwards, but I think the biggest thing is just contested football and winning inside, and blokes like Jack Redden, Ryan Lester, Tommy Rockcliffe, just getting their hands on the footy, it's really important for us. So if we can win it inside, as you could see in the first half against St Kilda, if we start winning the football and using our hands and then getting inside 50, we look a pretty dangerous side against anyone. So I think that's where the game will be won. So if we can get on top there, we'll be a huge chance.
Just quickly before we let you go, last year there was a real focus to turn the Gabba into a bit of a fortress again, and obviously happened. I think the last 6 or 7 games last year were won at the Gabba. You none and 2, obviously, from 2 starts there this year. How important is it to the group to start winning at the Gabba again and to make that a fortress as you started to do last season?
Yeah, it's as you touched on, we finished the season off really well last year at the Gabba, and the crowds are starting to build and get in behind us, and there's no better week than this week to start our season off against the Swans and hopefully get a good win for our fans, so keep turning up and supporting us. So there'd be nothing better than starting to build a bit of a fortress here, and we keep talking about it, but we've just got to, as I said, just play our game plan as we do, and then the rest will take care of itself.
Well, thanks very much for joining us on the Fancast today, and all the best for the game on Saturday night.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
This weekend, the reserves have a bye in the NEAFL, and the seniors are back at the Gabba in the traditional Saturday night, 7:40pm, a time slot up against the Swans. Mike, we've chatted about it a bit on the show so far. It's going to be a formidable task, but not one that's beyond us.
Not at all. We've touched on the kids a lot in this show today, but it's going to come back to those senior guys, and we're a bit remiss to miss a couple of those earlier in the show, but Jack Redden, who's not really senior, he's about 23, but he's one of those mid-tier guys. Terrific game last week from Reddo. Joel Patfull, best game this season by an absolute street. So I think, again, it's probably those older guys that have got to lead the way. We can't keep looking at the kids to prop the team up every week. So the older guys sort of stood up really well last week, and I think they'll have to do that again. There's no doubt if they want to run Sydney close.
Now, just quickly before we wrap up, tips. What are you going?
I'm going the Swans. Let's give ourselves a wrap. We both picked the Lions last week. We got that right, so that was good. But I just can't go past the Swans. I mean, the game's not played on paper, but I think Brisbane will be very competitive. I think they'll be within sort of 3 or 4 goals, but Sydney's just got so much scoring power. I can't quite see Brisbane kicking enough goals to overcome that. Yeah,
I think the Swans too, only because I think that with the young side we're still playing, it's tough to have a 4-quarter effort all the way to the end, and it's not at all an effort thing. It is entirely a capability thing at the moment. So I think you'll see us probably right with them for the first 2 quarters, hopefully. If we can be within a goal or 2 at 3-quarter time, then I think you never know what could happen if you can will yourself over the line. But
well, we've seen that happen at the Gabba quite a lot, particularly last year, games close in the 4th quarter. And when the crowd does get involved, it does have a great feeling, the Gabba. And I know the players have mentioned a lot, like you can really feel that crowd's energy when it's close. So if they are close and the crowd gets into it, you never know. And I certainly think there'll be stages where Brisbane have their ascendancy, and that they'll just have to make the most of those stretches.
Absolutely. It will definitely be an interesting game on Saturday night. We'll be back next week to review it and look forward to the Essendon match, the Hall of Fame one. That's it for the Fancast this week.